Black Widow, Dave. This is a movie that obviously has been held back due to COVID in terms of release. But I mean, there was talk of this movie being made back in 2014 after Age of Ultron. Like they, this is not a like something that just kind of came about. Been in the works for a while, and I think when you look at the cast of Avengers and you think about the stars who play them. We talked about Chris Evans last week. Check that out, the Chris Wars. Um, it never really made sense why you wouldn't give Scarlett Johansson a movie where she's the star, the lead, and especially when she can play basically James Bond, and we finally get it when we know her character is leaving the MCU. Uh, pretty crazy to me that this is when we're getting it. But what are your thoughts just around Black Widow coming out in general? It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. This movie been delayed a few instances, supposed to come out in May 2020. But yeah, obviously this movie is way too late and a mistake, and I'm sure if they could do it again, this wouldn't be the case.
No.
You have Captain Marvel as your first female-led superhero movie. When you had Scarlett Johansson already there, already established, also played by a more famous and bankable actor in Scarlett Johansson over Brie Larson. And just kind of strange, you know.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman kind of like you would have thought this would have come out a lot sooner after what happened with Wonder Woman when Wonder Woman was so rapturously received and Gal Gadot was embraced and all that. But no, it took all this time, and it's like yeah, this is set between Civil War and Infinity War. Makes sense in the timeline, sure, but you know what could have happened. This just could have came out after Civil War and before Infinity War, right?
Hmm.
Like
Totally.
what the fuck?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to be getting this as Scarlett Johansson's on her way out, kind of a swan song in a sense,
Yeah.
and also kind of crazy that she was upstaged in this movie. Man, Florence Pugh stole this movie, and it's like for ScarJo, I wouldn't say she's bad in the movie, but just tough to be upstaged in your final appearance in the MCU. I
Right.
think.
Yeah, so this is Black Widow marks her seventh full appearance. Full appearance. She also had a mid-credit scene for Captain Marvel, which clearly was just other Endgame footage. So seven full appearances, and we know how great an actress ScarJo is. She just reminded everyone in 2019 with Jojo Rabbit and Marriage Story, literally double Oscar nominated. And in that sense, I'm happy to see her go from the MCU. That way, she can make some other kinds of movies. But to have that talent upstaged by Florence Pugh, a bit of a tough scene. Then again, I think anyone with a pulse at this point knows that Florence Pugh is the real deal.
Yeah,
And
man.
now she's kind of completed it, right? Like she has her more dramatic bona fides established with Little Women. She's done something a little different with Midsommar. We've seen her on TV, a Little Drummer Girl. Now she's been in a co-star in a blockbuster and nailed it. Like what can't she do at this point?
Yeah, she was just so charming in this film as Elena, and um, to balance this superhero, super spy type role with the charm and the humor and just the overall energy that she brought was really just awesome. And I wouldn't say I loved Black Widow. I think it's an okay MCU movie, but to just kind of come away and be like, wow, Florence Pugh's just continuing to like round out her career and level up. It's just so fun to watch. And you also kind of get a fun David Harbour performance. You get a thankless Rachel Weisz performance.
Although less thankless as the movie went on.
Yes,
About halfway through, I was like, "Wow, Rachel Weisz not doing too much."
I had the exact same thought. And then when you kind of get the twist, you're like, ah, okay. Um, Also, this is pretty much just a Mission Impossible movie, which
Yeah,
I'm totally cool with. Like, and I hope the MCU just continues to do this. Just keep making movies in these different types of genres and realms.
and that's why I actually really like Black Widow. I'm quite high on it. I'd say it's definitely in my top half of MCU films. You know,
Mhm.
tough to rank something I've only seen once, but I like it a lot. and I like it because it barely felt like an MCU movie. You know,
Hmm.
they're the only like trappings of MCU ness are William Hurt's Thunderbolt Ross barely showing up just to like move some MCU plot mechanics forward that we already well understood because again this is taking place before the last two Avengers movies. You know, it's a movie about like spies, and it's like
Hmm.
actually about spy stuff. You know, I
Yeah.
thought yes, it has a very familiar Marvel third act, big explosions, lots of CGI and fighting and stuff, but everything actually made complete sense for the story we were getting in this movie. If anything, the weakest stuff is the beginning, just because it's a bit of a slow burn. But once Florence Pugh joins the movie, uh, I think it really just rips. So I was quite entertained.
Yeah, I think one of the things I would say was a detractor for me is just the absence of a really good villain in this. You have the
Yeah.
Taskmaster, who is Antonia Dreykov, and then you have Dreykov, her dad, and um, I think it's interesting to have the uh, kind of looking at uh, ScarJo's Natasha Romanoff and being like, kind of seeing this horrible thing that she had, this decision she had to make of, potentially killing Dreykov's daughter to try to kill Dreykov, and then, having to face that as a villain in this. I think that's an interesting part. But the Taskmaster, for the most part, is a pretty one note, like robotic
Mhm.
type villain. And Dreykov is pretty much just a villain in the shadows, and that is kind of like overarching, and I guess comes and gives the exposition dump in the second half. But nothing really stood out to me about that. It really places the focus on family, which I think is a good choice, because if it was just about you know Black Widow versus Dreykov, movie would have been a total mess for
Mhm.
me. But I think making it about the relationships was really much better choice for sure.
Yeah, and that's also why I liked it because it felt like the villains were more of a means to an end, but also kind of fit with the rest of the movie in that it's a story about family and relationships and
Mhm.
like your motivations to maintain or not maintain those relationships. And the villains directly played into that, even if, yeah, like Dreykov's a bit nondescript as far as MCU stuff goes. Taskmaster, apparently a little controversially, was quite changed from the comic origins of the character. But I didn't mind because I did think it made sense in terms of servicing the story we got. And I just thought that was pretty fun. Um, just thinking about like actually, funny thing about the villain Dreykov is I had this thought in the theater and I saw it in some reviews. Definitely gave me some like James Bond, like Moonraker vibes. Like he definitely
Yeah.
had some Bond villain esque stuff, which I also thought was welcome because there was tons of other spy movie, tropes and stylings to the story of Black Widow. So I still quite liked it.
Well, I think it probably also gave you Moonraker vibes, because you don't you just see Moonraker at one point? She's watching it in that
Yeah,
little
yeah.
shack, yeah. And they definitely want to harken back to that type of film. I think overall this is probably somewhere in like the maybe like 10 to 15 range for me. I would have to go back and actually like list them all
Mhm.
out. It's
Yeah, that
it's
sounds good.
it's yeah, and it's fair. I don't think this is anything we're going to tell our kids about someday, but still for MCU, solid. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, it's all coaching it in the MCU standard of it all.
right,
So when I
yeah.
feel like I got something even a little different, or at least
Mhm.
made me feel a little different, even if it's not actually that different, I just give it so much points because I'm comparing it to the rest of the MCU.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have a similar conversation next week when we talk about Loki, especially as it's contrasted against Falcon and the Winter Soldier right before it. Um, after credits scene, you see Julia Louis-Dreyfus
Mhm.
coming back, and I forget what her character
Uh,
name is.
Valentina De
Yeah,
Fontaine, something like that.
Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. There we go.
Yes.
Who's kind of like getting all the I don't know, tertiary characters in these
Right.
movies and these
Wyatt
series together.
Russell's. now a U.S. agent, grabbed at
Yep.
the end of Winter Soldier. Now Yelena.
Interesting. It seems like she's obviously sending Yelena against Clint, which seems to be setting things up for the Hawkeye TV show, I'd imagine.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, that was so funny about this post credits. And it got like a big pop when I saw it in the theater from the rest of the crowd. But like I already knew that this is what was gonna be because Florence Pugh was announced as part of the Hawkeye show
yeah,
publicly already. Like we already knew this, not even like a leak. It was announced. So I was like, all right, this is obviously something about Hawkeye. I didn't expect to actually see Valentina. Uh Guess it makes some sense though. Looking forward to that. You have Florence Pugh in the MCU now. You better be using her because I guess we've
yeah,
said she's really good. Um, I think some of the. I mean, do you have anything else on the actual movie? Because there's some interesting movie industry notes about Black Widow now that it's
yeah.
actually out.
I guess I just wanted to ask, like, was there a set piece or like a action part of the movie that really stood out to you?
Yeah, so I did like the ending with the tower in the sky, space station thing in the sky. Uh, Not that it's that different from other third acts, but I just thought it made sense. It looked pretty good. But I really like the prison break where they
Yeah.
are busting the Red Guardian out of prison. Even the lead up to that, where he's like so like up his own ass about what the Red Guardian was and how he had all these battles with Captain America, the U.S. versus the Soviets, right? He had all this pride. Like the character obviously is played for laughs pretty consistently.
Mhm.
That's the purpose. But I actually thought it was a pretty funny presence. But yeah, the thing with the helicopter, the prison break, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, the prison break was probably my favorite. That and the opening scene, where they're kind of running to that air base and
Right.
trying to get on the plane. I thought that was a really fun opening scene. Any like non-action scenes that you really liked? I think the
Yeah.
one that stands out for me is when they finally find Rachel Weisz and they're all sitting down at the dinner table together. I think that stands out as a really fun scene, and I think a lot of just the interplay with Yelena and Natasha. When they like when she finds Yelena and they have that fight, and then the rest of the what are they sparrows or whatever come. Forgot what they're called.
The other widows, yeah.
Other widows, yeah.
Very similar to Red Sparrow, the Jennifer Lawrence movie, in terms of the
Yeah.
story of it all. But uh, yeah, I think all the dramatic scenes are quite strong, largely due to Florence Pugh's performance. But I just think the script does a really good job of making everything land.
Mhm.
So it was a lot of that stuff. I thought Delana had some really funny moments. Right, I love the stuff with the vest. I also loved how they kind of like were mocking Black Widow's posing when she would like land and
Okay.
stuff. That was really funny, and then they called it back later. In general, ScarJo has previously criticized the overt sexualization of the Black Widow character in the early going, starting with Iron Man 2. I think it's really awesome to see how far that's come, even if it's a little unfortunate that we had to come that far at all. But
Yeah.
I think they did a really good job of kind of handling that and also having a lot of levity uh, connected to that kind of stuff in
Mhm.
in Black Widow the film. So yeah, the dramatic scenes, the character relationships, the family stuff. Didn't expect it to land as much as it does, and if it didn't land, it probably the movie would be a lot worse. But thankfully, it does.
For sure. Also, William Hurt looking a little frail in this. Hope he's okay. You know.
Yeah,
Um. Oh,
he doesn't do much in Marvel. He just kind of there. I hope
the
it manifests for
Sokovia
something
Accords.
worthwhile for him.
Yeah, I just like that his whole thing is just like, according to the Sokovia Accords, you're good.
Mm,
It's like, okay, those
yeah.
fucking Sokovia
I
Accords.
doubt they'd make him Red Hulk due to like the uh,
Yeah,
hoops that you have to jump through to make Hulk stuff still
yeah,
in film. But that would be the ideal future for him.
I'm sure his son, who we haven't heard of, will end up probably doing that someday. But you mentioned that there's some industry notes. Let's hear them.
Yes, I mean it breaks the domestic box office record that F9 had just set recently with 80 million. Not a surprise, but what was a surprise was that Disney Plus announced how much money they made off Disney Plus Premier Access after this weekend. $30 to rent the film at home on Disney Plus if you so choose. and they said they made $60 million on the first weekend. And that's less than the box office, but of course, they don't have to split any of that money with the theater. So it's a different bit of calculus. And this bit of transparency is just new with anything streaming, right? We all know how Netflix and everyone else will talk about minutes watched and households, and it'll be over like a 3 week span. This was our most consumed, blah, blah. It just a bunch of nonsense statistics that are actually super vague and basically meaningless, right?
Mhm.
And it's a big bit of frustration when you're trying to analyze anything. And Disney obviously has a motive when it comes to actually announcing a streaming thing because it's a positive result. It makes it look good. And I guess combining that with a box office that would be considered low during normal times per MCU standards, right?
Mhm.
And I've seen a lot of like a little bit of fear mongering and worrying about the theaters with this. But I think it's quite clear that like just digital, even at that premium price point, is still not enough to justify really expensive blockbusters. We know that. And now there's a lot of people saying that when you have a movie that would have tried to approach $1 billion, and Black Widow probably wasn't $1 billion movie, but it would have been, you know, high several hundreds. When you cut the legs off its theatrical like that, you also manage to cut off its like post theater run with VOD
Mm.
and stuff. And you're actually going to make less money down the line. So it's very interesting to see how this goes. Jungle Cruise will be Disney's next movie with Premiere Access coming out end of the month. I have a feeling we're not going to know exactly how much that made on Premiere Access. This is not going to be an impressive number in all likelihood
Yeah,
because
no.
it's a movie based on a theme park ride and not the 22nd Marvel movie, kind of obvious. But I'd say let's not be too uh, worried about theaters just yet because this is very much a one off thing and we're still in a pandemic box office in many regards. But interesting to see a rare bit of transparency in terms of streaming data.
Yeah, I saw this in theaters. My A list has been reactivated and being used again.
That's
Um,
right.
it was an interesting experience. I was only in the theater with four other people. I went really late at night. Um, I wore a mask the whole time, just because I felt better about that. But uh, movies are just better in the theater, man. Like I get
Hmm.
that watching at home is so much more convenient, but it really is just a much better experience. The sound, seeing it on the big screen, a lot more engaging. So, um, if you can go to the theater, you feel safe, just do it. I know not going to be that way forever. Eventually, we probably will be consuming things by choice, either at home or in theater for everything. But for right now, support your local theater if you can. Any last thoughts on this, Dave?
No, I think that's it. I mentioned Jungle Cruise, but also we never got any data for Mulan or Ryan the Last Dragon or Cruella, which also were Premiere Access movies. So until anything else substantial happens again, I feel like this is more one off than not. And notably, Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings, the next Marvel movie, is strictly theater only come September 3rd, Labor Day. Coming up
We're
quick.
we're really moving into the newness of Stage 4 now with Marvel. So, or is this
Right.
Stage 5? Stage
No,
4?
it's four. It's four.
4, yeah.
Shang-Chi and Eternals before the end of the year, as well as the third Spider-Man, No Way Home,
We had 2 years off, and now what, 4 Marvel movies? Oh
as well
God.
as four in 2022, as well as a litany of shows, both at the end of this year and next year. Yes, it's all Marvel all the time.